Alright, so let's take a look at MakerBot Print and get a little bit familiar with the interface, import a couple files here, and then prep some parts to send over to the actual printers themselves. So when you open up MakerBot Print, this is the screen you're going to come to. You'll notice a lot of things are kind of grayed out over on the control panel on the right hand side. And those won't be active until you actually insert a part. So let's go ahead and go and do that. Go to the File menu. And if you have a file that you want to insert that you've made, you'll go to Insert File. If you just want to come in and mess around with it a little bit and get familiar with it, there are some sample prints that are included, including the chain link, nut and bolt, and a couple other things here. So first thing we're going to do, we'll go ahead and import this chain link file. So click on that. It's going to go ahead and insert it. Now you can use the scroll wheel on your mouse to zoom in and out. If you hold the right mouse button, click and hold, it allows you to drag around and rotate around the build plate. And then once again, you can use the scroll wheel to zoom out to get a little better look at your part. Once you insert a part, you'll notice everything over here kind of lights up so we can use these features. The top two we'll come back to in a minute, but your default is in this model view. If we come down here to the bottom part and we click on the first one, which is model info, it's basically going to tell us what units we are in. Now what you may run into is if you design your part and export your STL in inches, it may look really small when you import it, and I'll show you what that looks like here in a little bit. But that's part of your STL export settings in Inventor. So if that is the case, it's not a big deal. You'll just need to come over to the model info and change the units from millimeters to whatever unit you exported your file in. The next button below that is the print settings. So this is where you're going to go and do most of your setup to get the quality print that you will like. We're going to come back to this in a minute because some of these down here are items you want to go to first. So once you bring in your part, let's go to the Orient panel. This is where you would rotate your part and get it oriented the way that you would like. So we have the X, Y, and Z axis that you can rotate around. You have default increments of 90 plus and minus 90 degrees. You can also put in a custom amount. So if you want to rotate a part 45 degrees or anything in between, you could do that as well. So if we go ahead and hit the plus 90 degrees on the X-axis, this is our X-axis going horizontally across our plate, and it's going to rotate it around that. So you'll be able to see it a little bit there, but if we just hit it twice, it takes it back to its original position. If we rotate it over the Y, we'll do a plus 90 on the Y. It's going to this is your Y-axis going front to back, and it's going to rotate it about that axis there. And then Z, it's going to rotate it about the vertical Z-axis. So if I hit plus 90, it's basically going to rotate it around this way. The next panel on the bottom is the scale panel. And this is going to allow you to scale your part if you need to. This should be done in Inventor, and everything should be exported so that you're in the correct scale. But if for some reason you need to print a small one just to see how the features are going to come out, and you don't want to use a lot of material, or there's several other reasons you may do that, you can do that here. Generally, you're going to want to leave uniform scaling selected. So this is 100%. So if I go to 80 and hit enter, it's going to scale all three dimensions on all three axes down by 80%. Let me put that back at 100. If for some reason you wanted to scrunch it up, I've never had a need to do this, but if you needed to, you can uncheck uniform scaling. We'll go to Y-axis and go to 80%, hit enter, and that just scrunches up that Y-axis and leaves the other ones at full scale. So haven't really seen a need for that, but there may be something you come across that you need that for, but generally it's going to be left in uniform scaling. Once you have it oriented and scaled correctly, we can go to the Arrange tab. Now, if you have one part, this isn't a big deal, but if you have several parts on here that you want to arrange efficiently as possible, you can do an Arrange build plate. Also, if you just want to manually move these, if you click and hold on this, you can drag this anywhere around the plate that you would like. So if we have a plate that has an older piece of painter's tape on it that has some holes in it you want to try to avoid, you can do that by manually moving it around to avoid those. The arranged build plate obviously won't take those into account. So you'll have to do that yourself if you're trying to print around something. But if you have like 10 parts in here and you want to space them evenly and just have them distributed evenly and print them as efficiently as possible, then you'll use the arranged build plate. Once you have your parts where you would like them, you can go to the Print Settings tab. And this is where you're going to do the setup for your print. Now we are using the Smart Extruder Plus on all of our printers, so you should always leave that the same. That should always say Smart Extruder Plus. You can go ahead and click on Print Mode, and this is going to bring up a few different options for you. So if you're just trying to get a really quick printout just for fit purposes, Draft might be a good option. Your quality isn't going to be great, but it should be really close to the final dimensions, and it'll be a part that prints a lot quicker. So that is an option there. And there's also this Minfill mode, which is the fastest print mode that MakerBot has. It's really ideal, like it says, for larger parts that don't need to be super durable. We don't run a whole lot of those. This would more apply to maybe to some parts on the Z18 that we'll talk about in a little bit. So this may apply more to that. Generally, for the 5th gen MakerBots, we're going to stick to the balanced. We may go into the draft on occasion, but generally we'll stick in the balanced print mode. So I'll make sure that's selected and hit done. Below that, you'll notice that there is this tab for support. If you check that, it'll auto-generate supports. Now, if you can avoid printing supports on the MakerBot at all possible, that would be ideal. They're not like the Uprint or the Objet in that you have to manually pick them out and remove them. So it's not an ideal situation. Sometimes we do need to use them, but if we can arrange our parts as such that they don't need support material and they can self-support themselves, that would be ideal. If you do need support material, though, you'll need to check it here in the support in order for it to generate those when we go over and generate our tool paths here in a little bit. I'm going to uncheck this for right now because the chain doesn't need support. The next thing we'll take a look at is infill density, and basically this controls how tight the pattern is on the inside of the part. So if we go to 100% infill density, it's basically going to print the entire part completely solid, which in 99% of cases is totally unnecessary, especially if we're just printing a first run or a draft or something like that. Depending on the part, generally we stay in the 10 to 30% range for a lot of things. If you have small features or small parts that really need to be strong, we can jump up into the 50% to 100% range if we need to. That'll be kind of on a case-by-case basis. If you have a question about this, just check with your instructor and get their opinion on it and kind of go from there. For this, I'm going to go ahead and put this at 20% infill and hit enter. The next option you have to deal with is layer height. And layer height controls how thick of layers that you are laying down for each pass. Generally, 0.2 millimeters is going to be the kind of the go-to. It gives you really nice detail, but it isn't super slow and giving you really, really thin layers. So a lot of the times you're going to stick at 0.2 millimeters. If you're printing something that has a lot of curves to it or a lot of really fine features, you may want to jump down to 0.1 millimeters. This is going to slow your print down considerably, so that's something to consider. If you're printing a bigger part, even if it has some smaller details, you might want to stick to the 0.2, and then if it doesn't work out, we can always come back later and print it at 0.1, but 0.1 will take forever to print. If you have a part that doesn't have a lot of fine features, you know, like a very square shape or rectangular shape block or just a big blocky part, we can jump up to 0.3 or even 0.4 millimeter layer thickness. This drastically decreases our print time, and for objects that don't have curves or really small features that we have to resolve, this is going to be a much better option. For right now, I'm going to stick with the 0.2 millimeters for this chain part. That's kind of the sweet spot and where we'll generally stick around. The next option is number of shells. So basically what this is the number of solid layers or solid lines it prints on the outside of your part. So if you have a rectangular prism, you have 6 sides, it's basically going to lay down a solid wall for each of these shells. So at 2 shells, it's basically going to make 2 solid walls along the outside, which is generally where we stay. It's nice and durable for most applications, and it saves us a lot of print time and material. If for some reason we need something that is extremely durable, especially for the walls, if it's going to have an impact on it or something like that, we can jump up in, the 3+ shell range, and that's going to be kind of on a case-by-case basis. Generally, we're going to leave this at 2 shells, which is the recommended setting. Next is our infill. So we have this infill pattern option, which gives us some different shapes for our infill. Honestly, I don't really mess with these too often. The diamond fill is going to be the fastest and is generally durable enough for almost everything that we do. So that usually gets left on diamond fill. If there's a special case that you want to use one of these other fill shapes, we can kind of address that on a case-by-case basis. But we'll leave it on the diamond fill fast for now. And Raft is something that should, except in very rare cases, should always be left checked. The Raft basically lays down a platform on top, or a platform of material on top of the tape, and then your part will print on top of that Raft. And this is extremely useful because it allows you to remove it from the plate really easily, and then that Raft generally just peels right off the bottom of your part. So it's just a couple seconds to take that off the plate and then peel that Raft off the bottom. And that allows you to get a really nice level plate for your actual part to print on. If you click on this Add Custom Settings, there's a lot of other options in here. We're not going to go through all these right now. We've gone through most of them, most of the important ones on here, but there's a lot of other ones we can turn on. We can kind of go through in a later video that goes a little more in depth to what the MakerBots can do. For now, we're just going to leave them be. And I have all of these settings, print settings, ready to go for this particular part. So I'm going to move up to the top 2 options here, and I'm in Model Active View. I want to go ahead and click on Estimates and Print Preview. And when I do that, it's going to go ahead and slice my STL, create all the tool paths, and show me about how long it's going to take and how much material it's going to use and things of that nature. So we'll go ahead and click on that. You'll see the loading bar across the top of the screen. It is generating your tool path. And now I can use my cursor wheel and I can zoom in on this part, kind of rotate around, and you can actually see the individual layers of plastic, and it's showing you what your tool paths are going to be. Now if we play the animation, it's going to run through and show us layer by layer what each layer is going to look like. We can pause that animation. It shows all layers here. We can go in under the layer range and say I want to look at a single layer. And then over here on the left-hand side of the screen, we can scroll through layer by layer manually and kind of take a look at each layer and see if there's any issues that we can find. Generally, everything's going to be okay, but if you have a very specific need, this might be useful to kind of take a look through. And even for parts that you're not too worried about tool paths, it's a good idea to come into the print preview and play the animation and just take a look at it, make sure everything looks all right, and that there's nothing weird going on that might prevent your print from coming out the way you want. At the bottom of the screen, you'll see there's a couple estimates. It's going to give you an estimate of the amount of material that's going to be used. In this case, we're at 0.01 pounds or 2.96 grams of material, which is it says less than a third, but I mean, anything less than a third is going to say that. So it's way less than a third of material. It's barely going to use any. And the estimated time is about 25 minutes to print. So that gives us a good idea of how long it's going to take once we get this exported and sent over to the printer. Once you have your part done, I'm going to go ahead and pause this animation, and I'm going to show all layers so I can see everything. This yellow at the bottom, by the way, is our Raft material, and this is what's going to be made first as our platform, and then we'll be able to peel off the bottom of our part once it's done printing. Now that I have my part ready to print, I want to go ahead and export the file for the MakerBot itself. If you come down to the bottom right corner, you'll notice there's a big red export button here, but there's also a up arrow here for a menu. If we click on that, we'll see that there should be 2 things present here on the screen. We want to see the Replicator Z18, and we want to see the Replicator 5th Gen. Now right now the Replicator 5th Gen is selected because we could see, if we go over here and click back over here and zoom out a little bit, this is the actual build plate for the Replicator 5th Gen. and you can see that that's selected. If I go in here and select the Replicator Z18, you'll notice that the build plate instantly changes and gives us a representation of what it would look like on the Z18. So generally you want to go in and select this before you start setting up your part. I knew I was going to use the 5th gen, which is why I didn't bother with it up front, but I'm going to go ahead and select that 5th gen, return it to the proper size. Once that's selected and I have double checked all my settings, I can go back to that estimate one more time just to double check and make sure everything looks all right. Zoom in a little bit, run that animation one more time. Everything looks good to me. So then I'll go down to the export button, and I'm going to export this, and you'll notice it's a MakerBot file. So I'm going to go up here and save this in my samples folder here in the MakerBot print, and I'm just going to call this chain link. And when I save that, it's going to save it as a .MakerBot file. This is the file that you'll have to take to the MakerBot and actually print your part. We'll also go in and save the actual MakerBot print file as well. But I'm going to go ahead and save that folder, and you'll see it says successfully exported. I'm going to pause my animation, go back to my model. And what you can also do is go to File, Save Project. And when you save project, it's going to save it as a .print file. And I'm going to save that same thing as chain link. And when you save it as a .print, this .print file is the file to open up in MakerBot print. If you went and tried to open up that .MakerBot file, it would not open in MakerBot print. You need to save the .print file. That allows you to come back, make some small changes maybe to print settings, and then re-export it and send it back over to the MakerBot. So once you have those exported, you're going to take that .MakerBot file, you're going to move it over to the flash drive designated for the specific MakerBot replicator you want to print on, and then we'll move on to using the interface on the MakerBot 5th gen or the Z18 and start printing your part. Now that we've exported that, I wanted to show you an example of a part coming in that wasn't scaled properly. So I'm going to click back on that print settings to close that window. And if you right click on your model, it gives you some options. You can go in and go to the print settings and orientation and everything from here. That way you don't have to go over to the right side to click. We can copy and then right click paste, so we can copy and paste multiple parts if we need to. We can right click and delete. We can right click and lock orientation so we don't accidentally move it from where we want it. We can also hide it and do those things as well. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this one. And then let's go and import a new file. By the way, panning around, if you click and hold on the scroll wheel on your mouse, that'll allow you to pan around. So I'm going to go up to the File menu and Insert File. Go to my samples here for MakerBot Print, and I want to import this bone file and hit Open. Now you'll notice that it is there, and we can zoom way in, but it is extremely small. And the reason for that is that this was exported in inches as an STL, and when you import parts into MakerBot Print, it automatically defaults to millimeters. So you see the blue around it, so it's selected. If I go over to the model info, you'll see the units are in millimeters. If I click that drop down, go down to inches and select it, it automatically fixes the scaling issue with my part. Now I can come in, drag this around, go over the orientation, reorient this however I like, and then go in and adjust my print settings and get that ready for export. One last thing I wanted to show you guys is this panel over here on the left hand side. There's 4 different icons here, 2 of which are going to be pretty important for you to consider. The top one here is will just take you to MakerBot.com. If you want to go take a look at some of the products they have, get some specifications on our printers, those types of things, you are welcome to do that. If you click on it, it's just going to take you in a link right out to MakerBot's website, and you can kind of check out their different products and some of the other things that they have available. Go ahead and close that window. The third one here, I'm going to skip this one here for a second. The third one is the MakerBot store. You shouldn't have any reason to ever go there. All the materials are provided for the most part here for you guys in the lab. If you have some special outside project that you need to do, and it's something that's going to be a lot of material. We may talk about having you order some stuff for yourself, but other than that, you shouldn't have to worry about this, and I wouldn't do it here in MakerBot Print anyways. The two items that you may want to pay attention to are the Explore Thingiverse. So if we go ahead and click on that, it's going to open up Thingiverse.com. There are a lot of different files up here on Thingiverse. Now, there's a lot of things in here that were printed on a MakerBot. There's a lot of things on here that are even laser files and things like that. There's just a lot of things up here. There is a search box up here at the top. If you're looking for something specific, you may go up there and type in a search and see what you can find. They do have some featured items, which can be kind of cool, and you can get some ideas from that. Generally, we will not get parts directly off Thingiverse and just print them, except in special circumstances. You have to worry about copyright problems here, so a lot of this stuff is just for personal use, so you can't download these and print a bunch of them and sell them, things of that nature. But it can be a good place to go and comb through some of the files that are up there, get some ideas and those types of things. The last one is the learning and support, and this is probably the one you'll use most often. If you come across something in MakerBot Print, or you're importing a part and you want to try to do something but you don't know how to do it, the first place you should go is to the learning and support section of MakerBot Print. Troubleshooting you may have to deal with depending on the situation. Most of that stuff will be done by myself, or I will help you work through any issues you have with the printers. One place you may want to go is this Learn section. And if you go to Browse Topics, they have topics specific to each printer. They also have topics specific to software, and a whole bunch of different areas, just general setup and general 3D printing issues. If you have anything that you're trying to find software-wise or anything like that, you can come into Search Support, type in a topic, see if you can find anything. You should definitely check this first before you come and find me or one of your instructors, just to see if you can find it really easily here and fix it yourself, and that way we don't have any, or you can kind of work through that on your own. If you go through this, still can't find what you're looking for, definitely get your instructor and they can come over and help you. We can go and close that window. But in MakerBot Print, the two over here that I would be most concerned about are learning support, and then also the Thingiverse option for if you want to go do some exploring for different parts and things of that nature.